Everybody, welcome back to another edition of Command and Counter. I am your host, Brad, coming to you from High Ground Gaming, and I have a little different show for you today. I know usually we're doing gameplay, but today it's going to be a little different. One of the High Ground patrons, Rumble Pack, has interest in building a new deck for CEDH. So we are going to build a new CDH deck from scratch and have a lot of fun. So really excited to get some comments and thoughts on people's ideas that maybe they play this deck or they have some cool tech that they'd like to share with us after the video releases. So really excited to get the community's input on this, but we will be building this from scratch, not really looking at other lists and kind of just coming up with our own ideas, see what we come up with, and it'll be cool to compare to what's out there. So welcome to the show, Joe.
Hey everyone, this is Joe, also known as Rumble Pack, and I have a hole in my deck building heart, and I would like to fill it with a brand new food chain deck. So, looking at kind of what's out there, what feels like it fits into the meta, and honestly, just something that feels a lot of fun, the Master Transcendent popped up to the top of my list. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. I'm excited to do food chain stuff again in a CDH game. And I'm really excited to dig into like a color identity of a commander that I really haven't played much. So the Master Transcendent is one, a black, a green, a blue, for a legendary artifact creature mutant. That says when the Master Transcendent enters the battlefield, target player gets 2 rad counters. And then you can tap the Master to put a target creature card in a graveyard that was milled this turn onto the battlefield under your control. It's a green mutant with base power and toughness 3 and 3. So I'm excited for food chain stuff. I'm excited for mill, some reanimator strategy, and we're going to dig into this list and figure out, what my version 1 of the Master Transcendent looks like.
Yeah, and I'm really excited for this deck. It's really kind of a cool techie deck too, right? Like the fact that it's not just your graveyard, it's anybody's graveyard, right? Like you rip a Thassa's Oracle off somebody's top of their deck and you have the ability to mill yourself. You can just steal their Thassas or, your own Thassas. It's kind of cool for like Thassa's wins. So I know I don't know. I'm really interested in building this deck, and it's not one that's really been on my radar. So I'm really excited that you were talking to me about it and we kind of got the idea to do this.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like as far as I've gone in CEDH, which I would like to say I'm a casual CEDH player, which sounds silly, right? But like I'm not on every single day playing, but it's my preferred way to play, and I have a lot of fun in it. So I like to go sort of off meta, explore how far I can push something, have fun in games, right? Because I'm not looking to grind out a tournament, but the master I think offers some really interesting opportunities in a deck. I think about kind of how CEDH has evolved over the recent time, and post ban it seems like things have slowed down a little bit. We've got some room, and we'll see how a food chain strategy fits into that meta right now. But I think the thing I'm most excited about with the master is there's opportunities in the commander to steal wins, like you were talking about with what people might call like parasitic gameplay, right? So ever since Born Upon a Wind came out, every time I have a deck with blue, which is a lot in CDH, I'm thinking like, hey, how can I sneak in a win on the stack or go for a win when it might be risky, hoping that somebody's burned some interaction and maybe we can find that window, right? So I love that has it built into the commander itself. And hey, maybe that's one of the first additions to this list we can look at is Born Upon a Wind.
So I guess I'll lay this down. I got on and just kind of added the mana base and basically just staples of blue, green, and black. I just add into the list all the staples that you usually see in a CH list. So the packages of ramp, the artifact ramp, the all the tutors, and then basically all the blue counter spells. We can remove any we feel like need to be out, and then we can add whatever we feel needs to be in. But I figured I'd just give us just like the bones of what any CDH deck would have, so we can kind of talk about those cards, but we definitely don't have to dive into them too deep. It's like Why do you have a Pact of Negation in the deck? It's because it's a free counterspell and it protects your win. So like, we don't need to get in the nitty gritty with those cards, but I am really excited to see what cards we end up adding to this and like kind of seeing what route we kind of take with this deck and what your vision is and what you want to do. So I think Born Upon the Wind is great. Let's start with a Born Upon the Wind. You want to win on top of
Yeah,
people.
yeah, and so it's interesting. Like some of my history in CDH, I suppose, is that as I started playing Commander, I started with Prosh. So love of Food Chain started off early, and as that deck got stronger and stronger and pushed out of sort of our casual pod, I really just enjoyed that play style. It's nice to be able to find an infinite mana outlet, jam your commander a bunch of times, and flood the board with whatever it is you're trying to do to push towards that win. And so as I moved on from Prosh and started exploring other decks, I bounced around here and there with other commanders for a while, but the next one that I really like fell in love with was Traxa. And so, having a food chain focused deck stands red introduced me to some of the staples that you already see on the screen, like Eternal Scourge and Mist Hollow Griffin. And so those are obvious includes here. Um, and once you have that infinite mana and you need to kind of make a move quickly, I feel like Born Upon a Win might be like the backup strategy here after a failed win attempt. But
Sure.
we'll see if we feel like it needs to stick around by the end of it.
All right. So you talked a lot about food chain. You want a food chain deck. I feel like this is the perfect food chain deck. This is exactly what food chain wants. It gives you your commander. If you can infinitely cast your commander, you can rad counter everybody at the table infinitely, which kills everybody at the table infinitely, which is pretty cool. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about food chain and things that might fit well with food chain. So what cards are you thinking about to pair with food chain to make this like the driving factor of this deck?
Yeah, well, in our creature suite, we already have the two staples in our color identity. Eternal Scourge, thankfully, fits in almost anywhere. We can generate infinite mana with that. Mist Hollow Griffin is another great option for us. I think when I think about all the times I've ran a food chain deck, having red, you go right to Squee. You put everything into that. But being a food chain deck, you always have access to green, and so there's some like protection for food chain that I've always relied on in Allosaurus Shepherd
It's
and
a good call out.
Destiny Spinner.
Yeah, I definitely
Yeah,
think
so
Allosaurus Shepherd should be something we should be on.
yeah, and there's a lot of other cards in our deck list here right now that could benefit from protection for our green spells. So things like Culling Ritual can't be countered once we've got that in play. If you're going to finish out the game with a Finale of Devastation, so I think it has a good place now. It's interesting, being a food chain deck with blue, you have a lot of protection for it.
Right.
And so, it's one of those things that it's a safety pick for me. We'll see if we need it by the time we're done building the deck or maybe
Yeah.
after a few plays, but it feels like an easy add early in to say, what supports our main strategy with food chain and how do we protect that? Allosaur Shepherd, Destiny Spinner at the top of that list for me.
Yeah, I think that's two good ads. Packing that in with the amount of counter spells that you have access to. I mean, I'm pretty sure you can protect yourself with those cards, and those are kind of your most important things to land, right? Is food chain. So if we want to protect food chain, best way we can. And yeah, and let's talk a little bit. So protecting food chain. I guess we have the counters. What about some ways to get food chain? So I guess let's talk real quick about tutors. So I added, like I said, I added all the tutors. We got Diabolic Intent, Demonic Tutor. Now, I guess I was adding the tutors just to add the tutors because they're important. Now, Diabolic Intent will be an interesting one. I don't know if that's one we might want to keep or not. We do have two creatures we can just sack to it. and not care, like Eternal Scourge or Mist Hollow Griffin. But I guess as we add more creatures, we'll find out if like sacking a Llanowar Elves to go get Food Chain or whatever else creatures we end up putting in here, if that one's gonna stick. So that one's gonna be interesting. But I mean, Imperial Seal, we have a lot. Vampiric Tutor, we have a lot of ways to just go get Food Chain.
Yeah, I feel like, looking at our commander and thinking about what the Master Transcendent's going to do for us throughout the game once he's on the board, having the ability to mill and choosing ourselves as a target, that's going to be something that lends itself to a graveyard reanimation strategy. So in my head, there's probably a plan B in this deck that involves a lot of that. Um, when we think about where we're going in terms of win con on this deck, the rad counters are great because you move to someone's turn, they're dead.
Yeah,
Like if everything goes right for us, those rad counters are going to take someone out as soon as their turn starts. So I feel like we've got some good options there. Thinking on win cons, we have Demir, we got blue black. I feel like Thassa's has to go on the list right away.
yeah. I think Thassa's is a perfect card for this deck. Okay. So yeah, let's definitely add Thassa's Oracle. That's gonna definitely be one of our main win cons. We're in black, green, and blue. I mean, Thassa's is the way to go, especially if your main goal is milling in the first place. So definitely like Thassa's in this deck. Thassa's is a card, if you're not familiar with it and you're new to CDH, is a card that basically says when it enters the battlefield, if you have no cards in your library or you have cards equal to the amount of blue pips you have on the table. If it is equal, or if your pips are equal to or greater than the number of cards in your library, you just win the game. And it is the most consistent win in all of CDH. Most people run it in their decks if it's blue. We kind of talked about a little bit, but something to get us to mill. We were talking, and obviously, Master Transcendent doesn't mill you immediately because it's all based on rad counters. So if you are food chain comboing, you're trying to hit everybody else with the rad counters, not yourself at that point of the game. So in order to mill ourselves, we'd need something like Hermit Druid.
Yeah.
That sounds like it would be a good card to. There you go, Hermit Druid. Let's add you to this deck. So Hermit Druid's the perfect card for this deck. So yeah, if you're not familiar with Hermit Druid's going to let us mill cards until we hit a basic land. And in our deck list, we need to make sure there's no basic land if we're going to be playing Hermit Druid, which I'm pretty sure there's not. I don't see any basics, so we're good. So yeah, as long as we activate Hermit Druid with Thassa's on the stack, that gives us infinite, or not infinite, but that just mills our deck and we win. So that's one good thing to have, to be able to mill ourselves. And then also, like, if you have Hermit Druid and Master Transcendent in play, you just activate Hermit Druid. You can just use Master Transcendent to grab your own Thassa's Oracle out of your own graveyard. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think there's also some really awesome cards that if we're running Hermit Druid, we're going to want to put in here to give us some alternate win lines. So one of the ones that I think is kind of unique to this deck, or at least it's the first time I've seen it played, is Tyvar Jubilant Brawler. And so, with Tyvar on, not only do we have an opportunity to, combo off with Hermit Druid, we also have sort of value just in the first ability that Tyvar has, where we can activate our abilities as soon as cards come into play.
Yeah, so here's Tyvar, Jubilant Brawler. You may activate, yeah, like you said, you can activate creatures as though they had haste, which is huge because you want that for Master Transcendent, you want that for Hermit Druid. Okay, so we were talking about adding Hazel's Brewmaster and Devoted Druid, but then we realized this deck doesn't really have something to pour it into. So we decided not to add it. Just trying to think of ways to break Tyvar. I guess let's think of some. Just go through some before we get all technical. Let's just throw some creatures in this deck. Like we probably want to be anywhere around 20 or plus 20-ish creatures. We're on Gaia's Cradle, so we definitely want to have some creatures. So what are some creatures that we'll go through the ones that we currently have, and we'll kind of talk about them real quick. But we have Deathrite Shaman. It's a staple. Obviously, you want that. Um, Mana, we're milling other people, we're milling our own graveyards. We want to be able to eat that stuff. So Deathrite Shaman's perfect. Delighted Halfling is going to let us cast our commander. It's ramp, keep us from getting countered. Also lets you cast the One Ring without getting countered, which is nice. Destiny Spinner, we already talked about. Elvish Spirit Guide, another ramp piece, just staple in green. Eternal Scourge is going to help you get your food chain that we already went over. Hermit Druid for milling ourselves. Llanowar Elves because you don't leave home without it in green. And then Miss Hollow Griffin, which we already talked about, and Thassa's Oracle. So what are some more creatures? Like, do we play Bop in this list? I think Birds of Paradise is probably needed.
Yeah, I think it helps with creature count. It's ramp. It does a lot of good things for us in here. I think we're in black. There's no reason to not run an Orcish Bowmasters.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Orcish Bowmaster is definitely a must. Not even a question. Okay, so yeah, I definitely Orcish Bowmaster. Um, do we run Elves of Deep Shadow? Like, how much ramp creatures do we want? Like, Elves of Deep Shadow at least gives you a black, but you take a damage, which we're not really doing anything with our life total. Are we on? We're
yeah,
not on like Necropotence. I don't think we play Necropotence or
no. I
no.
don't think we're trying to go turbo here or really find a new way to gain card advantage outside of some of the staples that we have available to us already. Um,
I think we do Elves of Deep Shadow. I think you play a lot of the one drop. I mean, I don't think we can be scared of an Orcish Bowmaster meta. Like, I think you kind of just have to run the. You want Master Transcendent out as fast as possible because that's going to get you
yeah,
going. So let's
definitely.
let's do an Elves of Deep Shadow. We can always cut it later if we find something better. Okay, so an Elves of Deep Shadow. Are we? Is Ewit? We haven't done Eternal Witness. I'm thinking like green staples. You probably want Ewit if we're
Yeah,
milling.
definitely. Especially if we're milling, especially if we have reanimator strategy in here, that feels like a great addition. Um, I think a something like a bloom tender.
Bloom Tender?
We're at 3 color value, right?
Yeah, I like Bloom Tender. Bloom Tender's perfect in this deck. Um, what about like? Are we? I feel like obviously we have to have Hoarding Broodlord in this deck, right? Like this is. I feel like this is a perfect Hoarding Broodlord deck because if you just get it in the graveyard, you can just pull it and put it into play. So I feel like we have to be on Hoarding Broodlord.
Yeah, I mean, it seems good. Especially if we've got a lot of mana dorks. We've got a lot of options to get to that mana value. Though I suppose we're always going to want to reanimate it if we can.
Yeah, which speaking about
Um,
reanimate, let's add reanimate while we're that card is a needed in this deck. So definitely add a reanimate to our sorceries. For those who don't know, reanimate puts a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield under your control. You lose life equal to its mana cost, but it's 40 life. We don't care. We will definitely put a Hoarding Broodlord into play and lose 8 life. Like that's fine, right? Okay, so we have
yeah,
Hoarding Broodlord, and then I guess if we're already playing Hoarding Broodlord, we got to play Saw in half. Like that just goes.
yeah. I mean, it's really interesting. Like I don't think I've ever heard people speak of hoarding Brewlord without the next card coming to mind being Saw in Half. It seems like it's a great combo. There's other cards in here too that are perfectly great targets for Saw in Half as well.
Yeah,
So it's really interesting to see this like combo really stick around, though. Like I feel like it never makes the cut in my decks.
Yeah.
Like this may be one where it becomes a really solid combo that stays in the deck. So I'm excited to be able to run that.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's perfect. Yeah, the Hoarding Brood Lord and Saw in Half. That all just goes together with the Master Transcendent. I think perfectly fits what you're trying to do. Are you? What is the? Isn't there's another reanimate card that you can like sack 3 creatures? What's that one? We should probably be on that, right? If we're talking about
So
reanimation,
Dread Return.
Dread Return.
So I think that goes along with our Hermit Druid strategy.
Okay.
Um, it gives us a way to mill ourselves out, uh, pull out Thassa's Oracle from our graveyard. But we need to make sure we have 3 creatures that we can target
Yeah.
to pay that flashback
Which I
cost.
think that's where all these mana dorks we just added come in, right? Like you can just, when in a crunch, sack all your mana dorks, boom, Dread Return back, Hoarding Brood Lord, or even like a Hermit Druid to just go right into it if you got like Tyvar in play. You can instantly
Yeah.
go for Thassas. I think that's a good call.
Yeah, I think one of the like most surprising things for me in this build is that there's a lot of redundancy in the deck that comes from cards that have a lot of optional paths we can take, right? So there's a lot of synergy between these different win cons. So there's a lot of cards that don't feel like they're only committed to one path. Um, which is interesting, right? Like I feel like in a lot of the decks I've played or built, you're going into the game knowing that you're going to drive for a single win con. Here, it feels like you have a lot of options. As much as I want to, rad counter the table to death with a food chain combo, there's a lot of layers in here of where we can go for sort of our own proactive win,
Mm-hmm.
um, where we're not dependent on the Master Transcendent.
Right.
So it seems like it's going to have a pretty easy time recovering from losses of key pieces in all of these different strategies. And that's super exciting for me. Like decks that I've played in the past, like Atraxa, it feels like you get one big piece of the strategy knocked down, and you're taking a couple turns to recover, and
Right.
that's difficult in in a CEDH match where you're fighting for your life every turn.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm thinking of that, like just like you talking about getting knocked down. I think a card we haven't talked about yet that I just thought of because you said that is like Agatha's Soul Cauldron. What are your thoughts on that?
Sure.
Because we can just throw a counter as we mill ourselves. You can just exile your own stuff, or you're milling other people. You can just steal their stuff and take it for yourself.
Yeah, it sounds like it's got to be in here. I think I sort of have a love-hate relationship with this card. It's a big part of sort of my main deck of Nixilis.
Yeah.
And it was one of the first cards since coming back to Magic that every time I read it, I felt more confused, which feels silly,
Yeah.
but their mental bandwidth in a game is an important thing to manage, and this is just one of those mountains I got to climb. I got to learn to love the Agatha Soul Cauldron.
Yeah, Agatha Soul Cauldron, just such a good card. He's stopping somebody from an underworld breach line to get rid of their LED, or it's just such a utility piece for 2 mana. Like it's definitely going to be good in this deck, particularly for sure. And I guess I did add a card as I was like putting this together. Mesmeric Orb. Let's throw it in. I want to talk about it. I think this is a perfect card for this deck. I got really excited. I used to play this card in like standard, and I loved it. It had no purpose in my deck other than to just mill other people's stuff and my own stuff with no. I mean, I was probably like 13, but I always loved this card. So let's move it to the main deck, and I think that's going to be one of our really good milling other people at the table. It's milling. It's milling ourselves. It's milling people at the table. Whenever you untap a permanent, you mill that many cards. So if somebody tries to go crazy, and even like I guess like what's even really cool about it, though we took it out, would have been like the devoted druid and mesmeric orb would actually mill your entire library because every time you untapped the devoted druid, you would mill yourself one. So that's actually quite interesting.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know what you pour all the infinite mana into, but if you have mesmeric orb and devoted druid with the combo with Hazel's Brewmaster, that would be an interesting way to mill yourself too. But I really I don't see all that green mana going into anything. This deck is very low on green so far. I don't see a green outlet that would make that worth it.
Sure. Yeah, I think with food chain in here as well, having ways to generate infinite mana in whatever color you need um, gives you a lot of options. I'd love to have more infinite uh, mana generators in here, but the only thing that comes to mind is maybe throwing that green mana into like a Finale of Devastation, which we've got so many options at our
Yeah,
disposal. The question just becomes, do we need it?
yeah, 100%. And that's always the hardest thing about building a deck is do I need it or do I just want it? Like do I just
Yeah,
want it
I
in the
try to
deck or do I
always
need it in the deck?
definitely, yeah, I try to always take the approach of like, this is version one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to get this to a table. I want to get a feel for what do I enjoy about it, and also like what do I have the capacity for? It takes time for me when I play CEDH to get comfortable with
Mm-hmm.
like certain win cons and certain combo lines and play patterns. And so I know as I go into a deck like this that has all this complexity, there's going to be things I lean on, there's going to be things I miss.
Yeah.
And so as I get more comfortable with it, I think there's options to explore those different paths that I could take.
100%.
Um,
And
yeah.
I think so. I'm looking at our list, kind of just going through my own head, and I feel like we have a huge lack of card draw so far. Like I'm not seeing we have. I mean, as far as card draw, it looks like we have Mystic Remora,
Hmm.
and I mean, not a lot of card draw. So like something. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Sylvan Library in green decks. Like, what are your thoughts about taking 8 damage every turn to try to get to what you need?
I'm not doing much else with my health, so I feel like there's an opportunity for it in this deck. Sylvan Library got reprinted in Dominaria Remastered, right? And so I think that was the first place that I was like, all of a sudden I had a bunch of these cards to put into decks. And I tried to shove it into every green deck I had at
Yeah,
first,
why not?
right? I feel like as I got deeper into those decks, I found myself taking it out a lot. But it's a great place to start. I mean, like I think it's a great card to have in here. It gives me some sort of fast ramp into games where I need it. Especially if I draw it early.
Yeah,
So I like seeing that. Um, and again, I'm not doing a lot else with my health, so it gives me an option to generate positive, card draw. Well, positive card draw feels like a silly way to say that, but
yeah,
it gives me advantage. It accelerates me into the game in ways that I like, so I don't feel like it's encroaching on any other
yeah.
strategies.
I think that's a good one. I think that'd be great. I also just noticed we don't have Worldly Tutor in this list, and with the amount of creatures we need to win, like if we get a food chain in our opening hand to have a Worldly Tutor, just go for it. Um, I think
Sure.
we definitely
Yeah.
want Worldly Tutor in here. Okay, so we're cutting it down. We only have 14 slots left. We definitely need at least another 4 creatures. Um, we definitely, I mean, we're good on the counter spells. Are there any like instance that you would want that you're a big fan of in these colors that you'd want in this deck?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of it here, right? I think uh, as we go down the list, we see all the protection we would ever need in our
Yeah,
blue
I
counter
mean, we have
spell
all our counter
suite.
spells.
Um, Yeah, we've we've got Saw in half as something that I think is going to go really well with our creature suite. We've got Tainted Pact and Demonic Consultation.
Yep.
Um, I don't know what else I would add here. I feel like we're feeling pretty good on instance.
Okay. I think the something I was thinking of, like, is this a chord of calling deck? Do we chord in this deck? Like,
Chord of Calling. So that is,
it's you search your library for a creature and put it right into play. But you
I
can
mean,
use creatures. You can use creatures to use them to cast the mana value.
yeah, it's got Convoke.
Yeah, it's got Convoke.
I mean, it feels good.
It's
Like
three
I don't
green.
see why
I
not.
don't like the three green. I'll say that.
Oh, hey, maybe there's the devoted druid
But I mean,
justification
all your
there, right?
creatures are most of your creatures are green. So like those are tapping for, like, even if you have Elves of Deep Shadow in play, instead of using it for the mana, you could just tap itself for cord. That's kind of cool. Birds of
Sure.
Paradise, you can use the green. Bloom Tender, obviously use those colors. I mean, I think it actually fits well. Considering you have a
Yeah.
lot of cards, like creatures that you just want to get out. Like if you do like a small one, you can get Hermit Druid at the end of somebody's turn and just win the game right then and there. Like that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good card in this deck. As far as any others, I yeah, we have Force of Negation for, I mean, Fierce Demonic Consultation for our win with Thassa's, as well as Tainted Pact for our win with Thassa's. These help mill our deck. Hermit Druid. We have a lot of ways to win with Thassa's. So I mean, I'm loving that. Like just get Thassa's in the graveyard and you can easily get around like other people's counter spells if you can just get those cards off and then counter them with your counters, then sneak Thassa in at the end. It's pretty cool.
Sure.
Okay, creatures. We need more creatures. What creatures do we need? Are you a fan of copying other people's creatures? I guess let's start there. There's a lot of blue creatures we could put in
Sure.
here that just copy. The fact that Master Transcendent just sneaks our creatures in from the graveyard. Like, do we want to be just sneaking in copy effect creatures where we can copy somebody else's something? Or, I mean, even copy your own Hoarding Broodlord if it's in play. Copy. I don't know. I think copy effects might be really good. The fact that you can sack them, use Master Transcendent to just get it back again, to like a food chain or something like that. Something weird.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think clones are something that I started to get comfortable with playing Atraxa.
Yeah.
Um, and then post ban, I feel like a lot of decks have started to move away from it. Feels good here with a creature heavy strategy. I think the ones that come to mind are like Phyrexian Metamorph.
Yep.
Having the opportunity to clone um,
A One Ring.
creatures or artifacts.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Clone a One Ring, get
Um,
protection, start drawing. Like that card's great.
yeah, I feel like that's sort of at the top of my list for clones. There's the funny one that it was in the Doctor Who set, Flesh Duplicate.
Yeah. Flesh Duplicate.
That that feels like one that's sort of towards the top of the clone list for me. The other ones I don't have as much experience with them. But
I think
what are
two
they? There's
clones is probably good. I don't know if I'd push it more than two clones. I think that's pretty good. There
yeah,
is like phantasmal image, but that dies if somebody targets it. So like I don't know if you'd
sure.
want that in this deck specifically. So I feel like you're gonna get it out of the graveyard. I mean, then it just die. I think two's fine. I mean, we only have like I don't know how many more slots we have for creatures, but we definitely need two more creatures minimum. And there's still like some good, solid like tempo pieces we could probably add. Um, what about like trying to think like green? What green like a? Would you be want to be on like a I don't know like a Manglehorn? I know that's like a staple in a lot of green decks. I don't know if you'd want to run it or not. It lets you destroy something, which is cool if it hits your graveyard and you need it. Like you can just revive it back, like get it back with Master Transcendent and blow up like an artifact or something. Um,
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
feel like having some artifact hate feels good. Like
Yeah.
I can't tell you the number of times I've played a CDH game and we've got 2, 3, 4 one rings going all at once. So it feels like something good to have in there. Um,
So
Having artifacts entered tapped is something that's been beneficial for me. That's also on Manglehorn.
yeah,
So I think you get a lot out of one creature
yeah.
when it comes to
So
having artifact hate.
I will say Manglehorn won't take care of a One Ring just because the One Ring's indestructible. But it is good to
Oh,
have a One Ring enter tapped.
yeah,
Like if they have a tapped One Ring, that's super good. Also, what's kind of cool is Master Transcendent turns all these things into 3/3s. So even if like
sure.
you let's say you just need like a mana tapper, like a mana dork, like a delighted halfling on like turn 3 that's in your graveyard, and you're just like, yeah, it just went in my graveyard for my rad counters. Let's just put a 3/3 delighted halfling or like a 3/3 birds of paradise into play. Like early games, kind of like cool. I didn't really think about that. But yeah, Manglehorn, I think it's
Yeah,
just a good card. It's a solid card to just get rid of.
yeah. It's funny too, like thinking about like the One Ring itself being indestructible. It's like, oh yeah, well of course it's indestructible.
Yeah, why wouldn't it be?
Like,
Yeah, you gotta go to Mount
but
Doom.
so
You
but
need
the
a card called Mount Doom, and then you can throw it in there.
yeah, exactly. It's funny the things you forget after playing for so long. Just silly little stuff. But
Right.
yeah, entering tapped will definitely help for that. Slow them down a little bit. So yeah, I feel like that's probably a good include. Anytime we're in, or I'm playing a commander that's in black, the two creatures that feel like they challenge my mental bandwidth the most in games are Dothy Voidwalker
Okay.
and Opposition Agent. They seem like such staples that they need to have consideration in a deck like this, especially at this level of play where searching through your deck is so commonplace. Um, how do you feel about those in this? I mean, Oppo Agent
I
seems like
yeah.
a
I
good thing
love.
to throw in.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to be on Oppo Agent. Yeah, a good call out. Oppo Agent is just so good in a format where everybody's searching for their win. Opposition Agent getting flashed in is just too powerful not to. And the fact is, you can mill it and then just get it back, right away with your commander. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. Good call out. And
Well, the
then,
thing
or oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was gonna say the thing with Dothy that always gets me is, things are instead of going to graveyard, going to exile with a void counter on it. So, I can deny other people's reanimator strategies, but yeah, there's this whole other list of things to pay attention to, which is again, I guess, like I said with Agatha's, just a mountain that I need to climb when it comes to my own play. Um, I suppose it still fits in here, right? Like, I mean, I'm going to be milling people with rad, so
Right.
like, I can't,
I
I can't leave that out,
I
right?
I'm curious. You kind of just I don't know where you reminded me of it or what you made me think of it, but what about like I would love to throw a Blood Chief Ascension Mind Crank in this deck. I feel like that would just be super fun. So
So you'll have to walk me
yeah.
through it. I
So
remember Mind
so
Crank,
yeah.
but
So Blood Chief Ascension. Your commander is a 2/4, which is perfect for this combo. Basically, Blood Chief Ascension says, I'll type it in. I'll pull it up. Blood Chief Ascension. So Blood Chief Ascension says at the beginning of each end step, if an opponent has lost 2 or more life, so your rad counters can make them lose 2 life. Easy if
yeah,
you give somebody rad counters. Um, then you put a quest counter on Blood Chief Ascension. So once Blood Chief Ascension has, um, whenever a card is put into opponent's graveyard from anywhere, if Blood Chief Ascension has 3 or more counters on it, then you may have that player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So basically, with your deck, anytime a card is put into a graveyard, which means you can trigger it multiple times if you're milling people with things like the what was it, the artifact that lets mill happen every time they untap, so like a mesmeric orb.
Hmm.
Like if you have Blood Chief Ascension on, basically every time they mill a card, they're going to lose 2 life. You gain 2 life, so will gain a bunch of life in the meantime, and also they'll be losing life. But it comes down to the combo with Mind Crank, where whenever an opponent loses life, that player mills that many cards. So once Blood Chief Ascension is on and Mind Crank, you just infinitely mill the person until they're dead, and you gain that much life. But also, like, these cards are just really good in your deck solo. Like, they don't need the other piece to be awesome. But like, you have so many tutors. If you do get Mind Crank, or you do get an opening hand with Blood Chief's Ascension, you can just tutor up the other one, and you have an infinite combo right there. I think that's kind of a really cool win con you could easily put in this deck.
Yeah, it sounds great. I mean, we were talking about Sylvan Library and what we're doing with our life in this deck. Um, feels like maybe they're at two different ends of a match, right? Like you're spending some life investing in Sylvan Library to draw cards. Maybe that even draws you into your Blood Chief Ascension and Mind Crank. You get like a refund on that investment or a dividend maybe
A
on that
dividend.
life
Yeah, there you
spent
go.
coming back to you with Blood Chief and Mind Crank. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
I I
Also,
think
you
we
just
can
when
find
you're
room for that.
you're just punching people with the freaking, like, say you get it and you're just hitting people with, I don't know, like a hoarding broodlord. You're milling them 7, and then when you mill them 7, whatever comes out, you can master transcend and grab whatever you hit. If they hit a nice creature, you can steal it. I think that's a really cool,
Mhm.
juicy tech that I've always been a fan of, that combo. I play it in my Francisco Malcolm deck, and it's definitely won me games, and it also just puts in work one or the other. Like Mindcrank, the best thing I'll say about Mindcrank that people don't understand is play Mindcrank, and specifically it says opponents, so it doesn't affect you, which is really cool. So you're not ever
Yeah.
affected by it. But just when people don't realize, a little card called Vampiric Tutor, I've gotten so many people with this. I've had Mindcrank in play. Search your library for a card, shuffle, put it on top, then lose 2 life. So I can't tell you how many people have vamp tutored with my Mind Crank out. They get their card, their win con, whatever they need. They put it on top of their library, and I'm like, okay, lose your 2 life. And they're like, yeah, lose my 2 life. I'm like, all right, mill your 2 cards. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, Mind Crank. And they're like, oh shit. And then all of a sudden they mill whatever they just tutored for. So like, you get so many people on that because nobody's used to Mind Crank. Like, it's not a used common card.
It's a beautiful villainous plan that feels exactly like
Yeah.
what the Master Transcendent would want you to do, right?
Yeah.
Like, I got you right where I want you.
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome. Is there any other, like, I feel like I feel like we need a little more card draw, like maybe one more creature type card draw. We don't really have many creature type card draw. Like, there's tons of blue creatures that draw cards, and I feel like, I don't know, what is your preference on creature card draw, like in blue? Like, there's like Fairy
Um,
Mastermind. There's the one that Ledger Shredder, which actually lets you discard a card. So I don't know if that might be something. Do you have to mill for Master Transcender, or is it just target creature put into a graveyard? Oh, it's milled, so it has to be milled. So you cannot
has
discard
to be
and use.
milled.
Yeah, so it has to
Yeah.
be milled. Because I was thinking Ledger Shredder might be kind of cool because you could use that, but that's not going to work.
Yeah, Ledger Shredder is one that like I always want to put into a deck and feel like for whatever reason, the folks that are in the know say, maybe not put that in. Um, Fairy Mastermind's interesting. Um, that's another card that I feel like every time I want to slot in, it finds a way out of the deck. I mean, here it's a flyer. We've got another way to kind of, get maybe a cheap shot in if we've got Mind Crank out. That seems cool. Um, you know, seems good, right? Like if it gets milled, I bring it back with the
What's
master.
cool is you bring it back
A
as a
2/1
3/3, and
flyer
it's a 3/3 if
becomes a
you
3/3.
yeah a
Yeah,
3/3 green
yeah,
creature, which is nice. I think Fairy Mastermind would probably be a good one here.
sure.
All
Yeah,
right.
it's funny. There's that final line of text on Fairy Mastermind that I always forget about, which is 3 blue. Each player draws a card.
Yeah, and that's actually. I mean, I know we were talking earlier about infinite mana, but once you get infinite mana, you can just Fairy Mastermind the whole table to death. If you have a way to um, put cards back in your library, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm liking it.
Or if you get,
How many slots do we have left?
how many slots do you have? We have 5 slots left. 5
Huh.
slots left. This is where it gets toy like a toyga. Um, like I don't know. Do we keep wanting to add more creatures? I feel like a couple more creatures would be good because we are creature centric on a couple things that we're trying to do. Um, what about Gilded Drake? Just a staple blue card.
Yeah, I mean, I have a little bit of experience with it from a little bit of time I spent with Kinnan. Um, feels like something that can take one of those 5 slots, and I don't have to feel guilty about whether or not it's a great choice. I don't have a lot of experience with the card, but from what I've seen it do its thing, it feels good.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
stealing other people's commanders, other win cons. What's cool about you is you can just like get it back from your graveyard if you mill it that turn, um, and just steal somebody else's whatever and go ham, right? I think that's kind of
sure.
cool. I'm trying to think of another. Do you want to be on Hullbreaker Horror? You mentioned we were talking earlier today, and you'd mentioned Hullbreaker Horror as a cool card. Um, is that something you'd
Yeah,
want to be on here? I mean, you could do infinite mana off of Hullbreaker Horror with like the a Mox and like a mana vault, or a Soul Ring. You can go infinite colorless. Does that, and it's infinite colorless, infinite. I don't know. What does infinite colorless get us or infinite colored mana get us? I don't think there's a payoff that we have in this deck, so I don't know if you need Hullbreaker Horror, but it is a hell of a card if you do mill it and you just get to bring it back for free as a 3/3 because you really just want the ability. I actually think that's kind of cool. If you mill Hullbreaker Horror, get it for free as a
sure.
3/3 and just start bouncing other people's stuff.
Yeah, I think at this point in the build where we feel like we have a lot of our core strategy set up, um, I got room to explore, right? Like, not going to be the final iteration of the deck. Hullbreaker Horror has done a lot for me in other commanders, in other like lists of the 99. I think it's something to put in there and see if it continues to earn its slot as we keep playing.
Is it Hullbreaker? Hall? Hull?
Hull, like
Oh,
Hull.
Hull. Yeah, there you go. That makes more sense because he's breaking
How
hulls.
could you forget your favorite card ever,
I
Hullbreaker?
do love that card. I'm just a bad speller. Yeah, so Hullbreaker Horror, if you don't know, it's a flash 7/8. Can't be countered. Whenever you cast a spell, you can bounce spells or you can bounce permanents to their owner's hand. It goes really nice with like the One Ring and a Mana Vault. You can make infinite. You can just keep casting the One Ring or the Mana Vault. Tap it for 3, cast the Soul Ring, bounce the Mana Vault back to your hand, use the 1 mana to recast, and you can just infinitely make infinite mana. Or like if you have a Felwar Stone, you can do colored mana, or like a Mox. Do we have a Mox Opal in here? We don't. Do we? I don't think we have enough artifacts to play Mox Opal though. That's probably why I didn't add it.
Yeah, it's a shorter list of artifacts.
Are we not on Mox Diamond? We should probably be on Mox Diamond though, right? Like that would be silly. But I don't know how I missed that. Yeah, we definitely want to be
We
on
got the
Mox Diamond.
slots.
Yeah, we got slots. We officially have 2 more slots. Yeah, I don't like to be on Opal with only 12 artifacts. That's a dangerous game to play. I do want to shout out Calling Ritual is like the best green black card in all of Magic, and that has to be in here. That card's so good. 2 slots left, Joe. What are you thinking? What are 2 cool cards that you'd love to add to this deck? That are kind of like put your own little touch
Your
of
own little feel
your own
to it.
little feel to it.
Yeah, I don't know. This is the nitty-gritty. This is the like what do we want to play with? What do we want to experiment with? So I feel like um we got a ton of tutors.
A lot of tutors.
Um we've got a lot of ability to navigate through our deck and find the lines that we want. I was looking at a Rogsai list that I never like finished, and in that pile there's a spell seeker. Um, do we need a tutor for the tutors?
Yeah, I think so. And that's a perfect card to get out of your graveyard when you need it too. Like it's a creature that tutors. I like Spellseeker. I'm a big fan. So yeah, let's add a Spellseeker, and then that can get you any one of your tutors that you need to go get, or maybe even like Saw in Half if you already have the Hoarding Broodlord in play. What about Razakath,
Sure.
the Foul Blooded? Are we a Razakath deck? I feel like we kind of are.
So I think I had this in a Cephras list that I was playing a while back, and I it's funny like coming back to Magic. Cephras was the first deck that I played out of the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms set,
Mm-hmm.
and scaling that all the way up through casual to CEDH, it was one of those decks that I like seemed to never lose on.
Yeah.
But when you get to the higher level of play with it, some of your turns get pretty long, and I've mentioned mental bandwidth a few times so far. That's one that really puts a lot of tax on the player and the pod.
Yeah.
So all I really remember about Razaketh is it being one of those things that just did a lot of stuff in the Cephras list. So I don't have a lot of experience with it, but let's
I
take
mean,
a look at it.
so Razakath is basically 8 mana. I mean, maybe we're in Hallbreaker Horror, so we don't. Like, I feel like you either play Hallbreaker Horror or Razakath, because we already have Hoarding Broodlord, which I think is just really good. But Razakath is pay 2 life, sack a creature, search your library for any card, put it in your hand, shuffle your library. It's an 8/8 flying trample. This gives us a nice sack outlet if we need to kill something. Um, and more tutors. So I don't know if we want more tutors or you'd rather have a hall breacher, but like I feel like one or the other should definitely. I think maybe there's only a slot for one of them. I don't know if you want more tutors or more bouncy knit shenanigans that can kind of combo.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Hullbreaker gives me some options with my Anorax. Um, Razaketh gives me some options to go towards the win cons that I want to go towards. I guess if I have to lean towards one or the other, thinking about food chain and some of the other infinite like mana combos that are in here, I say maybe we go towards Razaketh. But you know the deck sits at 100 cards right now.
I mean, we could leave it.
uh,
I was thinking maybe one more reanimating spell in the deck. I feel like we really only have reanimate and our commander to start to reanimate these creatures. Oh, we have and the sack. You
we have
have
Eternal.
eternal, yeah, scourge.
Yeah, Eternal
Wit,
Witness, Dread
you're right.
Return.
Dread return. Is
Um,
this a? I mean,
there's a couple.
noxious revival? Is that? Noxious Revival is just so good. It's free. It's 2 life to put a card on top of your library from your graveyard. Because like if you mill Food Chain, I feel like we want to have a Noxious Revival in this deck.
I mean, I'm a big fan of theme in my decks, and the master of the super mutants noxiously reviving something sounds great.
Yeah. So I feel like would you rather keep Hullbreaker Horror or Razakath for a Noxious Revival?
I guess Razaketh. I feel like it's more flexible, but I don't know. Like I think about the times that I've played Hullbreaker Horror, and I don't know. Like this was pre CEDH, but I feel like I spent a lot of time bouncing other people's permanents. That's not something I'm going to be doing here. I'm more likely to bounce my own, right?
Yeah.
Um,
But it's good to just
so
be able to bounce other people's permanents. It gives you a lot of control.
there.
There's
I
no
don't
right
know.
answer.
That's interesting dilemma. I don't know. Well, let's say Hullbreaker this time, and we'll put Razakath in the considering or the sideboard, and
Yeah, well, I'll move it to
it'll be
sideboard.
something I decide as I play. I
I feel like
mean,
you have a lot of
it's
tutors. You do have a ton of tutors. So is Razakath like it's very expensive. I love Raz. I mean, it's just such a good reanimator card. But let's grab
sure.
Noxious Revival. I feel like that is Revival. Okay, there we have it. We have exactly 100 cards. Is there any other cards you thought of, or like I know we talked about Protein Hulk as a possible card. I feel like if we do Protein Hulk, maybe we drop Hullbreaker Horror. There is just a lot of just good shit in here, but like I don't know. I don't know if you want to go for Protein Hulk. Um,
Yeah, so the idea that we could grab a bunch of these mana rocks and get sort of some creature positive on the board before looking at a dread return, or um, maybe something along the lines of, I mean, what else do we have? What else could it grab? I don't know.
yeah, I mean
It's
it grabs an
interesting.
Eternal Witness if you have something you need in your graveyard. It grabs, yeah, I mean Flesh Duplicate. It grabs Gilded Drake if you need to steal something. It could just be like instead of a combo piece, like it could get you a combo, but it also could just get you an Orcish Bowmaster and an Oppo agent at the same time, or something weird. I don't know. It's just a good card, but I definitely I'm not a Protein Hulk player, never have been, never have played the card in my life. So it's just definitely a card that seemed interesting in this deck if you go search for it or if you mill it with Master. But I don't know. Hullbreaker Horse pretty freaking good too. So you got enough instants and sorceries to keep that train going.
Sure. Yeah, I think earlier we were talking about Court of Calling. One of the decks that I enjoyed a lot was Rocco. I always want to say
Rocco?
Rococo. Yeah,
Coco?
yeah.
The
So
Disney
Court of
movie?
Calling is something that it was always referred or referenced to when it came to like the ability that's on Rocco, Cabaret Caterer,
Right.
right? And so um, these X green green or X green 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 go fetch a thing cards. Um, there's a new card that comes to mind, Invasion of Ikoria,
Oh, we
right?
didn't
So
add
in this
Invasion of
build,
Ikoria here?
yeah, battle spell. So I think that's something that's in the back of my head. I've only played it in one or two decks. I feel like I rarely ever draw it. Um, but being able to search your library or graveyard for a non-human creature with mana value X seems like it should go in this.
Yeah, no, 100%. So now we need to cut. Here comes the cutting something. We got to cut something. I think Evasion is a
Yeah.
must in this deck. It's too good.
So I mean, we started off this video by me talking about how I have this fascination with Born Upon a Wind, but what does it do for us
I
here?
don't think it does anything in this deck. I mean, you could. I mean, obviously, you can always win with it, right? Um, I mean, you could Thassa's on top of. You could Calling Ritual on somebody else's turn, and get a zillion mana, and then cast a bunch of stuff. I don't know. It's good. It's a good card. Uh, it's never a dead card. You can always just use it to draw a card. I think
Hmm.
Brain Freeze is just too good. Like if you get like Brain Freeze somebody after like getting like if you Hullbreaker Horror, well, that's interesting that you could do. So Hullbreaker Horror, I think we just by talking about Brain Freeze, we just verified Hullbreaker Horror plus Brain Freeze plus infinitely casting a Soul Ring in a Mox whatever infinitely. That kills the whole table. You can Brain Freeze the whole table off Storm if you do the infinite. So that's kind of cool. That's another way to win.
Yeah.
I don't think Born Upon the Wind, as much as people are probably going to give a shit for it, it's just a good card to play something at instant speed. I don't know. I don't know if you drop like a Manglehorn or a Born Upon the Wind. Probably, I'd say Born Upon the Wind if you're gonna drop something. Play old school Magic and win on your own turn, I guess.
Yeah, once I play the deck more, understanding what I can do at instant speed, what needs to be on my turn, maybe that's a place to like reconsider it, but it's
Yeah, Evasion is just too
it's a
good.
part of the game that I'm not well experienced in,
Yeah,
which might sound silly to people looking at CEDH, but
it makes it
um
tough. You have to find the right moment to Born Upon the Wind and interrupt somebody's turn to like if they're trying to win and go for it that way. So I get it. I want to look. Let's just kind of take a look. We're at 100 cards. We definitely have a lot of one and two drops, which is nice to see. No six drops, interesting enough. But yeah, just the 1 6 1 8 looks like a 5 1 5. Um, wow, this is actually a lot more. I thought the green was going to be lacking in this, but I'm surprised that we're almost cutting even with black being our least pips, which is very interesting. Um,
yeah, I feel like with our list the way it is now, we're relying on black for a lot of
just tutors.
tutors. The we got the reanimate in there. It's funny. I feel like every deck I made for the longest time had a dark ritual in it. Um,
Dark red,
this doesn't
yeah.
have dark ritual.
We don't even have dark red, yeah.
I mean, but like
Do you need it?
so
You're
much.
just mostly milling yourself and then you're putting stuff into play. So like
I
is
mean, probably not, right? Like, and what's the other one? Cabal ritual
Cabal Ritual. Yeah.
is that the
I
other
mean
one?
Cabal Ritual
Yeah.
would be really good in this deck, not gonna lie. If you're gonna mill yourself anyway, you can easily get the 5 mana on it. You're gonna definitely have 7 cards in your graveyard.
Hmm. More things to think about.
Yeah, like is there things you'd want to cut? I mean, we have a lot of tutors.
It's hard for me to say without playing the deck.
Yeah, why don't we
I
take this and we'll do a couple starter hands and see how many times we have to mull. Let's scroll down.
Yeah. Let's see what that looks like.
All right. Oh, okay. I didn't do seat order yet, but let's just say we're in seat 2.
Well,
It's
if we have a gemstone caverns in our opening hand,
yeah,
then I'm definitely seat 1 and I'm not playing it.
yeah. No, so let's go seat. We're seat 2.
Sure.
I'm not gonna get into like who we're playing against, but would you keep? We got Ewit Pact, Demonic, Eternal Scourge. Yeah, you 100% keep this. You go turn 1. You just turn 1 Demonic, right?
Sure.
You go turn 1. Well, before the game starts, Gemstone. Pitch the Overgrown to. Do you pitch the Pact here? I think you pitch the Pact. Do you pitch the Pact? You just
I
win the
don't know. I
game.
mean,
I
I
think
don't
you keep the Pact. Well, let's see what we draw. Mystical Tutor.
mystical
Yeah,
tutor.
we pitched the Mystical Tutor. I think you go
Well, who's our
Gemstone.
demonic tutor target here, right? I mean,
Well, you just
food
get Food
chain. We've
Chain.
got
Yeah,
eternal
you just get
scourge.
Food Chain right
Yeah.
now. You
So
go turn 1 or pitch the Mystical Tutor to that. Play your
mhm.
Misty Rainforest, crack it, grab a land. Demonic Tutor, grab Food Chain. Table goes, oh my god. Go to your next turn, draw. Felwar Stone. You play your Overgrown Tomb. You cast Eternal Scourge. You pact if people try to stop you, you pact. And if there's not more than one piece of interaction, you just infinitely cast Eternal Scourge, banking in the mana, then infinitely cast your commander. That's a turn 2 win, Joe. That's pretty crazy
Yeah,
that we just had a turn 2 protected win off that. Just do that every time.
yeah,
Just do that every
yeah.
time.
That's how you win
That's
games,
how you
right
win
there.
games.
Yeah,
Just do that every time. Let's do another hand. This time you are in seat 1 this time. Let's see.
sure.
Fish. You got the fish. You got an active fish, but very sketchy if somebody mental missteps it.
No protection. I see a lot of win cons in
But we
hand,
did say you're
which
in seat 1, so I think you do take this hand. You just play the fish.
I mean,
There's no way
sure,
people
seat
don't
one
feed
fish. Why
you.
not?
Yeah, or and if they don't, I mean, you also draw a card. You got demonic tutor, so you seat 1 fish. Let's say you draw nobody fish packs and you draw 2, let's say 1 card. That's not great. And then you go into your turn drawing a card. Mox Diamond is probably the worst thing we could have drawn, but you paid for your fish, so you get to go another round. I guess you don't have to discard yet, but if you discard, you can just discard this Miss Hollow Griffin, which is nice. All you
Yeah,
need is okay, cool. Somebody fed you 1 more land, so now you got your land. You pitch it to the Mox Diamond, I guess, or I guess you draw for your turn. Yeah, you just pitch your land to the Mox Diamond. 2 mana. Maybe you demonic tutor for another, or you just keep the fish around. But let's say you demonic tutor, you can force a negation, pitching the Mishollowed Griffin, which is really nice. I think that's a decent. I mean, you're not doing much, but if you can get out this 1 ring, you're protected. But yeah, I mean, you have one form of interaction to stop somebody.
sure. Feels less clean,
Yeah,
but
definitely a little more clunky. Let's do
you
another
know,
hand. You're in seat 4. I'll let you do this one. Go
my
ahead.
home.
Seat
All
4.
right, seat 4 home. I see a lot of lands. I feel good about a lot of lands, but I also feel nervous that I can't catch up as fast as I would like. Let's see what our first draw would be. Got a Felwar Stone, so
So
we got some mana rocks.
yeah,
You know, I suppose we take it because of the Lotus Petal, right? The Force Negation's great.
can't
We
use the force
maybe.
negation though. You don't have any blue cards, so that's definitely.
Oh yeah, that stinks.
And you have
Um,
33% of your deck is blue pips. So I mean, it's the highest. So you have a good shot of drawing blue.
Yeah, maybe this is a nice hand in seat 4 to feel a little sleepy. Maybe let some other people draw the aggro of the table.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
Um,
you do. I think you either do turn 1 fell. Oh, you could probably go turn 1. You're in seat 4, so somebody's probably played. Yeah, you go turn 1 Felwar Stone, Delighted Halfling. Turn 2, you play your next land. Now you have 1, 2. You have 4 mana. You can just play Master Transcendent on turn 2. I think
yeah,
that's a
I
great
mean
one.
it's these are some of the hardest calls for me in games because turn 4. I think a lot of people are going to assume unless you explode onto the battlefield, that there's other people, there's other priorities. Maybe they draw out some of their removal, some of their counter magic, and you can find that window to win second. But I think because I have that bias that like that's how I want my game to go if I'm sitting in turn 4, I expect it to happen, and when it doesn't, you just do nothing the whole game and feel bad.
Yeah,
But
we've all been there.
sometimes that's magic.
Yeah.
So I think having this amount of mana, having the delighted halfling, being able to get your commander out, all those things sound great. Likely that you're not going to get a lot of hate going through that with your seating order.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like a keep. See where the
Yeah,
rest of it
and
goes, right?
your commander is protected off the Delighted Halfling. So I think a turn 2,
Yeah.
you target yourself. So like, let's go into turn 2. You draw a card. It's another land. That's not great. But you target yourself on your ETB of your creature. So let's see what your 2 mills would be. So you'd mill land, which would keep the rad counter. and a land. So you'd mill 2 more land, which would keep both, which is nice. You keep both your red counters, and these are gone off the top of your
Sure.
library. But that's pretty bad to hit 1, 2. You only have 27 lands in the deck. You got 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lands in your opening hand, plus 2 your draw, 2 draws and 2 mills, which that's not great. But at the end of the day, you have a Nox Survival still in your hand. You have the Force. You got more land. So you go in your next
Yeah, if
turn.
there's anything that feels more swampy than running mono black, it's Sultai, right? So if you're in the swamp, you gotta expect some rain. You got
Yeah,
you
I
got
mean,
your island, your swamp, your forest, and you're getting mana flooded, and it's
you're
gonna happen, and
so
you gotta
mana
lean
flooded.
in.
Yeah, that was a lot of mana flooded. Let's deal another hand. Oh, this is interesting. That sucks that that's a guy's cradle.
Sure.
Can't take it. Deal another hand. Going second 7. Uh, no, I wouldn't keep this. You got nothing going for you.
Sure.
Going down to 6. That's doable.
Got some land, got some tutor, got some copy, got a Tyvar. I mean, what do you drop if you keep this? Feels bad to drop an Ewit,
I feel like
but
either you've dropped the Ewit or Tyvar. I don't know if you. This hand doesn't scream Tyvar. I mean, Tyvar is good, but I feel like you need the Mystical, and Wishclaw's just, you can't give that up. Maybe you do pitch the Wishclaw because you have Mystical. That way you're not giving the rest of the table a chance to go search.
yeah, it's doable. I mean, thinking about other cards we run, artifacts in graveyards, what can we do to save that?
I don't know. This is a very interesting. I don't even know what you Wishclaw for.
Hmm.
Devoted Druid? Or Hermit Druid? You probably just go Hermit Druid.
Sure.
Because then you have Tyvar, you can activate Hermit Druid the turn you play it if you get Tyvar down. Depending on who you're playing against, the Flesh Duplicant is castable on turn 2, which lets you copy something. I think you turn 1 Mystical Tutor. I don't know what you grab, though. I don't know the deck well enough yet. But
Yeah, instant or sorcery.
maybe you just get Calling Ritual and just scare the whole table not to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many options, right? Like,
Yeah.
you'll find yourselves in situations often where you can politic out of a bad hand,
Yeah.
throw some casual threats at the table, see what happens.
Yeah, if you
They
keep
can call
this.
you on it, but
Oh, your top deck's Delighted Halfling, so you just go turn 1 Delighted Halfling.
yeah, why not?
And then turn 2, you can go Mystical Tutor and then cast the Flesh Duplicant. Or no, you can't do the Flesh Duplicant, it's double blue. So
Well, waterlogged and tropical island on turn 2.
yeah. I was thinking if you Mystical Tutor on turn 2, but maybe you just Flesh Duplicate depending. It's an interesting hand.
Oh,
Either
I see
way.
what you're saying.
Either way, I think it's definitely a deck worth trying out. We'll have to try it out next week. Any
Yeah, I'm
other?
excited.
That's cool. I like this list. We'll definitely have to get it together and then slam some cards on the table.
Yeah, I think there's some things in here that are things that I'm comfortable with, like Allosaurus Shepherd, Destiny Spinner. I think those might be early cuts with how deep our counter magic
Yeah.
suite is here. But those are safety picks for me while I'm getting used to the deck anyway. I know myself, I'm gonna want a food chain every game until I
I think
realize,
just protecting your food chain, if that's what you're going to probably be tutoring for the most, I think it makes a lot of sense to just make sure you get it down, because there's nothing worse than
yeah.
casting food chain and getting it countered. I play Tali; it happens all the time. It's really rough.
Yeah.
But cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This is the Master Transcendent deck. What's the deck name? What are you going to name it?
Ah, you're gonna hit me with that?
Yeah, I gotta
We
hit you with
got
that. You got I just put Master Graveyard Blaster because I didn't know what to name it. So
uh Master Blaster Transcendent Graveyard. How about that?
Master Blaster Transcendent. You gotta give me the crazy word. Transcendent Master Blaster Transcendent Graveyard.
Sure. We'll just put all the
Great.
words in it.
The Master Blaster Transcendent Graveyard deck. Love it. Let's get you in here. Rumble pack.
Gotta drop it with a K.
Was it with a K?
It's with a K.
It
Yeah.
is with a K? Is it P-A-K or is
Yep.
it P-A-C-K?
PAK.
P-A-K. Okay. Cool. Well, I'm excited to see this on the table. We'll have to get some games with it. And I hope everybody enjoyed having Rumble Pack on. Like I said, close friend of mine. We play Magic together. We hang out a lot. And yeah, excited to see this new deck and see it in action.
Yeah. Thanks for taking some time to dig through and build out the deck list with me. I'm super excited for this. It's funny the whole way through we didn't mention this, but yeah, Universes Beyond is the topic of the day, right? Or forever, the week, the month, the year. When the Fallout set came out, I found myself surprisingly excited about it. Fallout was one of the first games I had for PC, and I bricked my first computer trying to open up enough room on it to like play Fallout off the floppy drive disk, right? So like it's funny like having never actually gotten to see the master at the end of that game because I
Yeah, because
destroyed my computer.
that's the first Fallout ever. The Master Transcendent is the main bad guy in the first Fallout ever, and not a lot of people have played that first Fallout,
Yeah,
which
now
makes
I
it
just
really
get to
funny.
be the master.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, I'm excited. Well, for anybody watching, we appreciate you watching. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have any ideas, please like in the comments. Give us ideas if you play this deck or you know somebody that plays this deck and you have certain things that you do with it. We'd love to hear it. Love to get that 2.0. I know Joe mentioned this is the 1.0, so there's always going to be a 2.0 and a 3.0. So flood the comments. Give us your ideas. Would love to keep upgrading this deck. Like I said, we built this kind of on the fly. I wanted to do this as just a natural, like not going off of other people's decks. I have not looked at anything. I was just kind of trying to go off the cusp and come up with a cool deck together. And I think we did a great job. And I think this deck, obviously, turn 2 wins just slaps. I think that's where you want to be in CDH, I believe. So, once again, thank you. Like, subscribe, join the Patreon, and we'll catch you guys next time. Once again, thank you everybody for watching. This was a really fun time. And if you would like to build a deck with me, join our Patreon. It starts at the $5 tier. You get one video where we will construct and build the deck together and kind of use the community to help continue to fix it and critique it. And it's always a really good time when you're brewing new decks and just having fun with it. So please like, subscribe, and follow me for more content. Big shout out. Thank you so much for Rumble Pack coming on. Joe, I really appreciate it. And we will catch you guys next time. Follow the Discord below and like and subscribe. And let's not forget a big thanks to our Patreons, our legitimate business person tier, Tyler Dean, aka Absolute, Ryan Johnson, and Rumble Pack. Thank you guys so much. It means the world to me that you guys support me, and I really appreciate it. And also, let's not forget Cousin Two Chains in our Goblin tier. Thank you so much. It really appreciate it. Every little bit helps. Thanks for the support, guys. Thank you so much.